Jesse Chason with Lisa Blanchard as the host of Airing Addiction.
I share often my journey started on this campus. Got sober as a client here, just like you.
I really do see phenomenal change.
Always hope. I've seen situations that on the surface look impossible become possible.
Doing this podcast is to share those recovery stories, be honest about what the challenges are and have some real conversations, but kind of share that out on the airwaves.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome into another exciting episode of Airing Addiction. My name is Jesse Chason. I'm here with my co-host, Lisa Blanchard. If you are listening live or close to live, happy November, happy Thanksgiving, however you celebrate the holiday or however you honor your own beliefs. We are fastly coming upon the end of the year, and we have a couple great podcasts left in this year. Certainly today's is a great one. I'm excited. I always say that, but I really am excited because I remember co-hosting, I don't know, a year and a half ago and talking about this role being added into Spectrum's sort of Rolodex of different outreach. And here we are, it came to fruition, and this has happened again and again and again. So I will turn it over to Lisa to introduce our guest today.
Thanks so much, Jesse. And yes, happy Thanksgiving or kind of moment of gratitude. This podcast is absolutely one of the things that I have so much gratitude for, and it comes up in most of our podcasts, the idea of hope and of gratitude. But this is a great opportunity to have a guest on here in November when we're all a little bit more focused on that. And I'm excited to have with us Matthew Geer. So Matt Geer is a person in recovery for 7 years as of this month. So awesome. Congratulations. And so he has a lot of roles. And so he's the program director of Perennial Recovery and the co-owner of Project Healing House and co-founder of Gap Recovery. And on top of all that, he's actually part of Spectrum, and he is a recovery coach with Spectrum. And we're going to hear so much more about that role and about what he specifically does. And there's lots to hear from Matt, but I'd actually rather hear it directly from you. So with that, Matt, would you like to just kick us off with just a little bit about you, about your recovery journey, as much as you'd like to share with us?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both. It's an honor to be here. It's always an honor to share my story. It's an honor to be able to work in this field today because I come from a background of active addiction, mental health challenges, and I'm a true believer all that past is what got me, to sit here and to be able to have these discussions today. Many years of active use and giving recovery a shot. I will say the best thing I ever did for myself was not give up, was to continue to plug away, whether it was a detox, whether it was a CSS, whether it was a halfway house. I was always giving it another shot. I started my process at about 17 years old, over in Leicester, Massachusetts at the Hope House. I know it's not there no more. But that program is what showed me that recovery is possible at a young age. Coming in at a young age, it's not easy. It's not an easy task to sit back and watch your friends indulge and enjoy, and your friends go off to college and they're getting ready to turn 21, and like all these things were I bypassed at a really young age due to my active use. But like I said, my first taste of treatment ruined my active addiction. Every time I went back out, it basically showed me that people are getting better and I could get better as well. I remember, I'll kind of fast forward too. I remember getting my first sponsor. I was an AA guy. I was a 12-step starter. I started that process through the 12 steps. But I met my first sponsor at about 17, 18 years old. And I always had this concept. I don't know why, I still haven't figured it out, but I had a concept in the back of my head that everybody was leaving meetings, going back home, indulging in whatever they're doing, and coming back, the next meeting and talking about how great life is and how sobriety, and come to find out I was completely wrong. So I meet my first sponsor, Chris, and I go do my thing for many more years, 10, 15 years of in and out. And every time I come back, he's sitting at this meeting sober every single time. And I'm sure he doesn't know this, but it's helped me tremendously just by walking into a building and seeing the same person doing the next right thing over and over and over again. It showed me that this is real. This is the real deal. Recovery is possible. Recovery is real. And it's happening right in front of my eyes. So like I said, many, many, many years, many programs, multiple overdoses, homelessness. It all kind of brought me to a place in 2017 where I committed my last crime to supply my addiction. And it just so I'm a true believer that everything in my life has happened just the way it's supposed to. And
Max and Josie got in a car accident.
hold on one second. I will so I come in 2017, do my thing with the crime and my last use, and it, like I said, it just so happened to be my next door neighbor where my last crime was committed. And I'm gonna say by the grace of God, it happened the way it did because my neighbor knew right away. So my neighbor's been watching me for 12 to 15 years of active use, and he's watching me tear apart my family. He's watching me tear apart the community. And when this gentleman found out that I did what I did, the police officer showed up, and it just so happened to be the Grafton Police Department. And we'll get into the story of the Grafton Police Department because now I have the honor to work side by side with them. Showed up at my door, knocked on my door, and I think anybody listening to this recognizes that, that big cop knock. When it's the police at your door. I opened that door. And let me tell you, it was the first time I looked at a police officer. I felt supported, and I bawled my eyes out to this gentleman, crying, telling him everything about me. I'm a drug addict. I don't know what to do. I kicked my neighbor's door in, da 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 da. And his exact words to me, Mr. Gear, we already have all the information, but we really appreciate you coming out and being honest with us. He said, Mr. Gear, we're going to give you two options. So back, I'm a person too who is riddled with trauma, in my past, in my childhood. And one of my biggest trauma events was in high school, my second year as a freshman. I walked into the school and the principal walked me into the office, and wanted to have a conversation with me. And the conversation was brought just like this police officer. So they said, Mr. Gear, we're going to give you two options. And I said, all right, what are those two options? And she said to me, that police officer out front who's sitting in his cruiser, this is what we're going to do. And they said, you have the option to walk off the property, and not cause any chaos, and you're never allowed back on Northbridge property again, Northbridge High School property. And she said, the other option is that police officer out there is going to escort you off the property. You're still not allowed on Northbridge High School property ever again. No one discussed with me at that point of like a GED or an alternative school. There wasn't an option other than bye-bye. We want nothing to do with you no more. And again, due to my own behaviors, but it put on abandonment issues in my life, and it started on and it continued that way. Officer says, Mr. Gear, two options. And again, I lost it because my thought was like, Mr. Gear, you're going to jail, or your second option is you're going to jail. And I knew deep down inside I wasn't going to get the help I needed. It was much different though. He said, Mr. Gear, we're going to give you those two options. Your first option is to go over to your next door neighbor and knock on his door, and have a conversation with him. And if he wants to press charges against you, we're going to be sending you to jail. Your other option is you don't go knock on the door and the state's going to press charges against you and you're going to go to jail. This time there was something in between that, and I went over and I knocked on my neighbor's door, and like I said, he explained to me, Matt, I've been watching you destroy your life, sitting on that porch every single day till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. He said, all I want you to do is go get help. Like, and it makes me emotional now. This young kid, younger than me, said, I just want you to go get help. That's November 4th of 2017 is when my journey really begun in recovery. And like I said, I sit here today, 7 years of November 4th. And again, you're not going to hear me. You'll hear me a lot talk about my recovery. It's about my recovery. It's about my growth. It's about me being the better person than I was yesterday or a moment ago. It's about me being able to be a father. It's about being a husband, a son, all the things I was not capable of being in active addiction. And like I said, now I get the opportunity to sit here, have these conversations on a podcast, like nervous. I don't get nervous very often, but it's one of my favorite things when I do because it reminds me that I'm a human being. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to be nervous. And like I said, I get opportunities to go out in the community and share my story. It's one of my biggest gifts. Also through active addiction and recovery, I get to, Lisa said it earlier, I get to be a program director for a program. I get to be a recovery coach and work with 27 police departments in the South Central Mass region. Like, who would have thought, 7 years ago, they were knocking on my door, ready to take care of what I've caused. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got to the place I am today and my journey of active addiction into recovery today.
So much symmetry, right? So I just go back to a little bit about you saying like everything has happened as it should. And I'm just really struck by the compassion that police officer showed you when he knocked on your door that day, the compassion your neighbor showed you, and the fact that you get to be part of offering that compassion to other people who get that knock on the door, right? Who have that interaction in the community now. So much about your story strikes me, but that really hits me for sure. And one of the things you said, I actually circled it because I wrote it down and circled it because it's now becoming what a favorite quote of mine, right? Like that you have been through multiple treatment episodes and every time treatment ruined your active addiction.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, that is a really cool, like a cool way to describe that opportunity to see that there's something else in that. Every time that you go to treatment, you get a piece of that message that you take with you and are able to probably still bring in to your recovery today. And so, you know that we run, multiple programs, and, Jesse worked at Northern Recovery Center in our inpatient, on our Westboro campus. And sometimes that's a hard place to work, right? You only see people at their worst. You only see them back when they're not doing well. And it's really challenging. And so I just always appreciate those moments where we hear from those that we support that, every bit of treatment does help a little bit. You get something out of it. So those were just a couple of my quick.
Yeah, when I work with one-on-one with individuals, and when I hear people having setbacks in their recovery, I try to explain to them, we never lose recovery. Recovery never disappears. We lose days of sobriety. We still have that recovery box built in us. It stays. It's not going nowhere. You will never, let me speak for me, I will never be able to go out and use a substance today and be okay with it due to recovery.
Yeah.
If I never got a taste of recovery, I don't think I would be having that same mindset of like, even if I did go and have a setback, it would not be the same. And it never has been ever since. It's wild. Another reason why I try to empower people. Like, the people that I work with are the experts. You guys know yourself the best. I should be asking questions to you on what you need, instead of driving that bus for you. And again, that goes right into that recovery coach model of being able to work with others on an expertise end of them. Like, they're the experts. And when someone hears that, like when someone told me that, like, you're telling me I'm the expert on me? Like, talk about empowering. Like, you just called me an expert. And another piece of that empowering piece is like, I explain to individuals that they're experts at stopping. We are the best on the planet of stopping using substances. Our challenge is that maintenance process. It's not the stopping of the substances. We're experts at that. I've done it 50, 60 something times. That to me, I'm an expert at it. We just got to maintain that process now. And that's where I really like the recovery coach model, is that maintenance, is that guide, is that you drive the bus, let me hop on your bus. I can tell you every once in a while, hey, you missed the left turn. Let's go back and take that left turn. That's kind of how I see that recovery coach model as well.
Yeah. I love that, Matt, and I can identify with so much of what you said from, a young age. I forget exactly how you worded it, but like all your friends were graduating school and going off to college, or like, doing things in their life, and you had already surpassed like the experimental use years ago. And, that brought me back to a situation I remember with a kid that I went to college with that I've never seen since. Sorry, high school with, that I've never seen since. He went to college, and our lives couldn't have been more different at the time. And you talked about abandonment issues, and I remember feeling like, whoa, this is different. How come I'm not doing what everyone else is doing? Right. But I also heard you stay accountable for a lot of things, right? Like that experience at high school where, yes, it could have been handled differently, right? It could have been, here are your options, and actually give you more than one option. And I also heard you say like it was a direct result of my actions. So that's a gift of recovery today, where we can be accountable and, clean up our side of the street. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about what you do with those 27 police departments and what that looks like for you as a recovery coach.
So, recovery coaching with a post-overdose program is a little different than your everyday recovery coaching, one-on-one work, meeting with somebody weekly, building a recovery wellness plan. That is how I started recovery coaching, in a peer support model, where people were coming in, we were sitting with individuals, we were working with them, food stamp, you name it, license, we were taking care of things like that. And then I got introduced. I've been doing the post overdose with the police departments for, I want to say, like 3 or 4 years now. So I've been very experienced with it. When it first started, and this goes back into my story when that officer knocked on my door. That officer, I don't know if he still realizes, but he built a relationship with me in the moment. He built a relationship with somebody in the community, and like, see, it makes me emotional. Somebody in the community, like, instantly, that gentleman built a connection with somebody. So when this all started, our big goal was to build connections with police officers and community members. So the big thing was like, we want to be able to take a recovery coach wants to be able to take a police officer with them to do a follow-up with somebody. First and foremost, safety first. We got to think about safety, right? The second part of that was, officer should come plain clothed as himself, as a support system, and not a system where we're here because you did something wrong. And I remember doing one of those first post-overdose follow-ups, and the first thing that the officer said that I was with was, "Sir, you did nothing wrong. We are here to help you." And when don't get me wrong, as a person who was in active use in his past, an officer knocks on your door, it's a scary moment. It's a traumatic moment, because most of us are involved with the law at some point through active addiction. So when I see somebody come up to my door, in plain clothes, and the way I operate is I come as myself. You are not going to see me in a suit and tie coming to knock on your door. You're going to see holes in my pants with my hat on and my sunglasses on, and I'm going to walk up to your door and I'm going to be a human being. And I'm going to talk to you like a human being, just like I talk. I don't put on this professional hat or anything. I just be myself. And then I also have the opportunity for that officer to take that power hat off and just become a human being in that moment. And again, this goes back to that peer model where it's about balance. It's about Johnny, who's working here is up here. Well, we need to bring Sammy up here as well. There needs to be no power differential. And that's what I've seen with these police officers. So we started doing these knock and talks. We started knocking on doors. And the big thing about it was resources. Like, let's approach these individuals. Let's have resources at their door. We're ready to rock and roll. That also included me on building resources as a recovery coach. I'm a true believer that a recovery coach needs to be a walking resource, a mobile resource. At any moment, at any time, someone could call my phone and say, I need food stamps. And I know exactly where to send them today. I know exactly how to walk them through that process. We've gotten phone calls of, hey, I've got a court date. I'm scared. I think I'm just not going to go. And that's where a recovery coach says, no, probably not the right move. How about me and two other people go with you and support you on that and advocate with you, not for you, with you. Because that individual needs to advocate for themselves. This is where that recovery coach comes in as that support system, as that guide, as the one sitting in the back of the driver's seat saying, hey, you missed that left again. These are the opportunities I get. So this has been going on for a few years now. We've built those relationships with the community. We've got the police officers. I get phone calls from police officers just by individuals. So what we do is a post-overdose program. I get numerous phone calls from police departments like, hey, we've got so-and-so on the side of the street. They're under the influence. Do you think we can help them out? 100% we're on it. So this has turned into police officers with compassion in the community.
Yeah.
Not just when they need to, not when Matt calls and they need to go out on a follow-up. They're doing this on the daily basis. And I've been able to build relationships with these individuals. Now, those relationships have been built. Now these police officers have opportunity to do it in their own community without the recovery coach, because now individuals know who they are. Even when they see them in a police uniform. Dave, good to see you again. To me, that's amazing. I used to run from, they wouldn't even have to be chasing me, and I see one and I got to hide behind the building. So that's been a big change in the community. That's the difference in recovery coaching on the post-overdose program compared to that everyday, that one-on-one recovery coaching work. I have the opportunity to work with people long-term due to the severity of the disease and overdoses in the substances we're dealing with. A lot of times it doesn't turn into a long-term thing, but I also have the option of sending people out, getting people services with spectrums, getting people services that they need. I send a lot of people over to Everyday Miracles, a lot of people over to Recovery Connection, because I know they're going to get what they need. I might not have that opportunity to do that one-on-one work with them, but I know Recovery Connection has recovery coaches. I know Everyday Miracles has recovery coaches that will sit there and work with these individuals. So we all work as a team now. It's become one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
So I mean, I have so much to respond to, but a couple of things that really strike me is, although it's not a traditional recovery coach role, you bring that recovery coach perspective, right? I often hear, recovery coaches and many of our own staff have done a lot of work with educating me, right, as like the clinician in the room, that we're not doing for, we're doing with. And that is that's like the best way, I think, to describe the difference between a case manager, a recovery support navigator, who might be giving people similar resources, right? But they might be calling for them. They might be doing a lot. And a recovery coach might be like, hey, I know of all these things. Which of these sounds like something you need or want because you're the expert? And let me do it with you.
Mhm.
You're going to do it. And that just is, I think, one of the big, when people talk about kind of what does a recovery coach do versus what do other people do, from that place of lived experience is huge. And the other thing that I really love is that balance, right? And that power differential and the ability that you have had on communities to shift that power differential, maybe not all the way, right? Because no matter what, like I have a power differential with police, right? And I don't really have any reasons to, but that just is. But, to shift that enough that there's more balance in those interactions and that sustainability that you're building in communities with the police officers now having a different perspective, whether they're with you or not. And the thing that always strikes me, because I'm often in a place of, informing the community at large, people in my life, family members who don't understand addiction, and helping people recognize that there's always a human on the other side of those comments or those perspectives or that behavior or those that criminal activity. There's always a human there. And it's hard, I think, for police officers. I think the same sometimes of nurses in the emergency department, right, who are only seeing folks at their worst and seeing it repetitively and just seeing the destruction, to look beyond that and see the person in front of them. And that's honestly the gift that you're giving people.
100%. And it's one of the biggest challenges in the world today because, again, when we're in active addiction, we're doing things that, listen, I wouldn't think of doing today. Causing chaos that I would not even think of doing today. And what it does is it gives us that stigma. It gives us that really bad look of like, they're not going to get better. We're going to continue to have to deal with this forever. And when individuals like myself and other individuals out in the community that I surround myself with turn their lives around and show that, like, I don't. To say about myself that I am the one with the most powerful people in my community is unbelievable to say that about myself. Like, I couldn't look in the mirror and smile at one point. And to be able to feel that way about myself, not in a way where, I still drive the same Honda that I was using in. I'm not talking about in a way of being up here in the structure of society. I'm talking about right here.
Yeah.
Like I can go anywhere. I can smile with anybody. I can laugh with anybody. I can cry with anybody today. We can go through pain together. We can go through happiness together. We can do all this together because all I got to be is me. Like, who would have thought? Who would have thought that was going to be the outcome of active addiction and recovery? And now Mac just gets to be him, because this also backtracks into those school days of not being able to be myself, having to impress people so I could level up in society, that level up piece, what I was kind of talking about. And a lot of times we get into recovery, and early in my recovery, I had to be the great I am. I had to have the new Nikes. I had to have the new, the new fitted hat every week. And it, through the process of growth and understanding and feeling more pain inside, I understood that that's not what I'm looking for here. I found purpose today. I found purpose. You just actually said this too. And I found this about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So a few years into my recovery, where I was searching for purpose. some message came along one day that my purpose in life is to shift the minds of others. That's it.
Nice.
I'm a mind shifter. That's my job, and is to start to change the minds of preferably people like myself, and different pathways of recovery. I'm a huge infinite pathway guy. Huge on that because I'm a true believer. And again, not just because I'm a recovery coach, but because of my own life and my own recovery, many, many pathways have been added to my recovery. And like I told you guys before, it started off with a 12-step process.
Yeah. And I can identify and relate, and I'm hearing so much good stuff, Matt. I often tell patients that there's no one size fits all cookie cutter approach to recovery. What works for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for somebody else. There's a lot of similarities, right? We can talk about some like universal similarities, such as what you just touched on about finding a purpose, right? Having a purpose-driven life, having a why. That's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest questions, especially speaking personally in active use, trying to search for, why am I here? What am I doing? What's the point in all of this, right? And I love the fact that you identified that, a couple years in as a mind shifter. And now working with different people who, maybe on the outside, I still get a little lump in my throat when, I'm driving down the highway and I know I'm legit. It's my car. I have a license to operate it. It's insured and registered and all that stuff, right? But I see the blues behind me and I'm like, oh, crap. And then they keep going, right? And once in a great while, they'll pull me over and say, hey, do you know how fast you were going? And I'll say, ooh, yeah, my bad. And, but I am reminded of, like I said in the intro here, I think it was my first podcast I did with you, Lisa. We had Katie O'Leary on, and we were talking about her work in the recovery coach community. And Lisa, you said something to the effect of, we're looking into it as far as adding recovery coaches to our continuum of care. And here we sit not too long after that, right? Just a couple short years. And, Matt, you had mentioned if you don't have the time, right, because you're pulled in a lot of different directions, we probably won't even have the time to get into all that you do and the many hats you wear today. But I heard you say you refer to recovery coaches at one of Spectrum's peer recovery centers because they'll get the one-on-one that they need, right? So how cool. And also, I feel like it's appropriate. We also had another police officer on here shortly after that, Miles. You mentioned power differential, and when I saw Mike Miles as a teenager, because I too got my first taste of recovery right around the same age. You said 17. I was like 16, 17. He was a therapist of mine, and walking in that room and feeling like, whoa, intimidated. And then all these years later, finding out he was in recovery and he was just trying to share with me what was freely given to him. And we had him on here to tell that story. So I would love to hear about, those many pathways that you're a fan of and what works for Matt. How do you, maintain your own self-care and balance in the intense one-on-one work you do? How do you recharge your batteries?
So I am extremely grateful. Let me start by saying that for the process that I went through early in my recovery, I needed a 12-step change. But when I went through the 12-step process, I completed that process and had obviously the understanding of it's a lifestyle change, it's a way of living. But for me, it opened up as a man with trauma, and as a man growing up with trauma, I was always told, men don't cry. If you're going to cry, we're going to give you something to cry about. All that stuff of like, hold your emotions in. You don't talk about things in the home, things of that nature. The 12 steps opened up a lot of this trauma. And I had nothing to do with it. I was stuck with a boatload of trauma in the front, of my brain every single day, crying, like losing my mind, but with about a year of sobriety, right? Miserable. Kept going, kept plugging away, kept, questioning myself. What is the point of this? Like you said, Jesse, what is my purpose in all this? Should I be married? Do I want to be a father? Do I want to be a son? All these questions I had for myself is when I started opening up and talking with a gentleman that I know very well and saying, listen, I'm ready to call this quits. I'm ready to go back to active use. I can't do this no more. And he started to share some other modalities and other pathways of recovery that he's going down. And he started talking about a holistic approach. He started talking about eating healthy. And I'm like, well, like the Twinkies ain't cutting it no more. The pint of ice cream at 2 a.m. is probably not a good idea. I started working a little better on what I'm putting in my body. Okay. And when I started working on what I'm putting in my body, started to question, medications that I was on. Do I want to continue to do this? I'm starting to feel a little better. And I'd go back to this gentleman, I call him my spiritual guide. And I'd say, hey, listen, I think I want to try this. And I love it because the first thing he said to me is, listen, go talk to your doctor. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to stop taking your medications because you want to. I think it's a great idea, but let's do this the proper way. And the doctor I've had all through my active addiction. And one thing, if people are listening here, the one thing I will say is build a solid relationship with your primary care doctor. My primary care doctor has tried saving my life. And again, it makes me emotional. I owe this guy everything. And he's still my doctor till this day. He tried saving my life so many times, and he would put himself at risk to try to get me better, to try to help my family. Like, he would call me in the middle of the night and be like, hey, I just want to check in with you. I want to make sure you're all right. Like, to me, that was another next step. So I went to my doctor, and I had this conversation with him. And he said he 100% agreed. Let's start the process of coming off these meds. That's when I went back to my buddy Matt, and we started talking about yoga, and we started talking about breath work. And he introduced me to ice water therapy. And then he also started to introduce me to more holistic, plant medicines. Instead of taking a certain pill, I've got a friend who's an herbalist, and he comes out and he shares with me all the time of like the weeds that are growing in our yard, that we could be boiling into teas. And when I am all congested, instead of going to take that Benadryl, boil your tea, make it out of this, red reishi, all kinds of different kinds of mushrooms that you can be putting in your protein drink, and things to start to rejuvenate this well-oiled machine, so to say. He started to teach me about the human body, and he started to teach me how it works and all these things that it's supposed to be doing naturally. I will say the biggest thing for me is my ability, first and foremost, to breathe. It's been my medicine, without a doubt. It's basically like that anxiety pill that I used to take. It's breath work now. And I remember this gentleman saying to me, hey, do you know how to breathe? And I'm like, no, not really. And he's like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, I am breathing naturally. Like, we don't have a choice but to breathe, right? We stop breathing, we no longer live. And he started pulling up some information on like Wim Hof breathing techniques. He started talking about holotropic breathing. And I had no clue what any of this was. And once we started the breathing techniques, he brought me into ice cold water. And he told me, you need to breathe through it. Breathe through the pain, breathe through the suffering, because the beauty's on the other end of the pain and the suffering, just like my active addiction. Beauty on this side of things, beauty, but I had to go through the chaos and the pain and the suffering to get that light and that beauty of things. So my ice water therapy, I jump in ice cold water, the colder the better, every single Sunday. It's a tradition of mine. I got a lot of people in recovery trying it out, and what it does is it changes the way I feel. It's actually a proven spike it's the same exact spike as cocaine. So when you use cocaine, and you jump in ice water therapy, you get the same scientific spike The only difference is with ice water, it balances out. With cocaine, you got the big drop. And due to the reason why people constantly want more and more and more. That ice water therapy gives me that very similar uplifting high, but with a balance of feeling good for hours and hours afterwards. No stress, being able to walk through challenging moments. That's where I found a lot of my healing process and continuing to work with other people. I hate to see this, but I have to see people doing well. And I also have to see the other side of the active addiction, because both sides remind me. If I work in the field and if I'm constantly working with people who are not well and are still extremely sick, it starts to bring me down, to question myself. Matt, is what you're doing working? Matt, is it worth it? Matt, should you just go back to the restaurant where you made more money? These things start to question in my head. So I really need to see individuals, Jesse, like yourself, man. When I hear about somebody in recovery that's a clinician, when I hear somebody that's in recovery that's a CEO of the company, and I'm like, "Psh, let's go. Like, you just fired me up. I hear Jesse, like, let's go. I'm calling the school when we're done here. Like, how can I make this happen? So
So I
that's kind of like I'm an all over the place kind of guy. I'm somebody, if you guys come to me and say, "Hey, I heard about this new pathway of recovery. What do you think about it?" And I would look at you and be like, "I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try it." I'll let you know next week after I try. I'll tell you what I thought of it. So that's kind of my gist of that holistic all around recovery. And 7 years into recovery, let me tell you this, because people out there might be feeling this. I just got set up with therapy. I need it. I'm going through life's challenges. Recovery's great and all, but life still happens. I'm married. We still have those struggles. I'm a father. I still have those questions like, am I fathering my daughter correctly? And there's not many people out there to answer that question. So it's very crucial that I keep growing and I keep learning different ways of growing and being able to kind of put my own ego to the side again and saying, Matt, you could use some therapy. Stop trying to play this big I am, this great I am guy who's supposed to be this big guy in the community. Go get yourself some help. There's nothing wrong with it. So that's been a big game changer this past week where I get to go jump in and get my own therapy and get my own support. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that because, of course, I'm biased, right? I'm a therapist. I think everybody should be in therapy, including therapists, right? Like we all need it. But I do think there's the right time for that, right? It's when are you ready to participate in that therapy that's important. And one of the things I want to talk a little bit about kind of what you experience in that balance too, because that really struck me. But, you started this conversation on pathways with just, the recognition that you've been through a lot of trauma and a lot of things were kind of taught to you to be pushed down. And one of the things that sometimes we do in recovery and even in treatment settings is that we help people uncover their trauma and we take away their coping skills, which was active use, right? Like we take away, and it was really effective. This is why it continues so often, is because it really does support somebody in the moment. Like it's that both and of active use. And so we need to help people find what are the other things that you can do to cope now that we're uncovering all of this trauma that you've been managing often with substances for so long. And I really appreciate your holistic response, right? Because it's a lot of things that bring you back into your body, right? And so kind of the classic trauma book, The Body Keeps the Score is so accurate that when we bring ourselves back into our body, then we start to cry and you're like, oh gosh, what's this? Like, why am I crying? And it's because you're in your body and you can actually feel those things now. And then how do you manage it? And a lot of the things that you're talking about are things that are becoming really science-based, right? So, I just pulled this book out because it's one I just bought for my own clinical work and on, polyvagal theory and how we really kind of support our nervous systems. And that ice, that cold, right, is one of the ways that we support our nervous systems. It's why he tells me to grab a piece of ice, put it on the back of their neck, put it on your forehead, put it in different places, put your hands in cold water, right? Ice water, take a cold shower, do an ice bath. I have not yet gotten to the place where I can do an ice bath. I really hate cold, but I tell myself someday I'm going to try it. You might be influencing me now, but but all of those things, the nutrition, the things that you know, that how recognizing how your body feels is so connected. And the last thing I wanted to focus on is, one of the things that I really wanted to ask you today, and you really just answered it in that conversation, is how, like, the particular type of recovery coaching that you are doing is really triggering, right? Like, you're constantly, what we talk about, and Athena Haddon and I were just talking about this. So often it's like we're just putting people back into a war zone every time we ask them to help others. And from the place of lived experience, and that we have to do it as a team. You described so well earlier how you don't do this alone. You've got lots of connections. You send people to the peer recovery centers. You probably have opportunity to connect with that. But I really appreciated what you said, that you need to see both individuals doing really well and individuals not doing really well, like that both things are helpful, but there needs to be some balance there, right? It can't be all individuals not doing well, because then that's just hard, and leads to a lot of burnout and a lot of questioning and a lot of things that can trigger ourselves. And, you can't just see people who are doing really well, right? Like, you kind of need both things. And I really appreciated that perspective in doing this work, right? We have a mobile van, and I think it's very similar to the kinds of work that you're doing, because we're going into communities and supporting folks, who might be just starting treatment, haven't accessed care well, haven't been able to attend, and stay consistent with medication treatment that might really support their recovery. And it's a hard place to do coaching.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not simple. We'll say that. Not only that, I'm a community member. I grew up and ran the streets of Central Mass, and so it can become challenging when I'm going to knock on a door and I know the individual. It's a good possibility I went to school with you. It's a possibility that I got high with you, or I did something to you that you're not going to be very fond of me of, because of our past. But I remember, I'll never forget this. Went to a door and grew up with the individual, went into the house, sat down, and it just so happened to be this individual is actively using in the moment. And it was one of my first experiences of seeing a substance, and a substance of my choice at that. And it was one of the wildest moments in my life. And I apologize if I get emotional again, but I'm an emotional man. I walk into his room and he's sitting there doing his thing, and I seen right through the substance. And I looked into this gentleman's eyes, and I just seen pain, and I seen suffering. And I seen, and to be honest with you, I didn't see the drugs at all. It didn't cross my mind of like, oh, wow, look, he's enjoying. It was like, you're dying, man. And I want to be here to help you. I want to be here to guide you and support you. And I remember leaving that house and calling my wife and being like, I just seen crack cocaine, and I didn't think about it at all, and all that. And I was telling her the story and just bawling my eyes out. And I told my spiritual guide the same thing, and he says, you're starting to see past the substance as a beauty, and you're starting to see the pain in other people and what it's causing. And again, I've done a lot of Worcester outreach work, and Worcester is a whole ball game in itself. It's a tough city. And walking up, and majority of the people that we do follow-ups with in Worcester are unhoused. They're homeless. So you're walking in situations where you're like, probably not the safest, but where individuals that connect with people. I can walk into a tent city and connect with people like that. I can't say that for everybody. Some people may walk into a tent city and not make it out, to be honest with you. It's the connection I make with people today. I think it's what others are kind of drawn to, where there's no more walking up and down the street and seeing somebody and putting my head down and walking away. It's that piece where I go and I go up to you and I say, "Hey, what's your name?" And when you say, "Hi, my name's Lisa," I say, "Lisa, can I sit down and have a conversation with you? I happen to be a smoker. Hey, can I give you a cigarette? Are you hungry? Let me get you something to eat." All these barriers I'm going to try to knock down in that moment just so we can sit down and have a conversation. That's it. And if you do that for me, if you sit there and talk to me and just say, "Hey, hey, I'm hungry," it tells me right there that you just connected with me. Because when I was out on the street and someone said, "Are you hungry?" I would flip you off and tell you where to stick it. Because what do you think? Why would you ask me if I'm hungry? And those are the things that would cross my mind. So when someone says, "Hey, yeah, come sit with me." Yes, I would like that burger. Yes, I would like that water. That's a game changer. That's a game changer in someone's life. You just made them a human being and not a piece of trash on the side of the street. And that's what people did for me. People would come out and when I was homeless in Worcester, and they would have conversations with me, and they would try to bring me to places, and try to like have conversations with me and AIDS Project Worcester and all these things that people would try to help me out with. I just didn't trust anybody. And we weren't running this recovery coach model when I was out on the street. People weren't coming out saying, "Hey, I'm a person. I used to get high. I used to live out here. Why don't you come get a coffee with me?" No, it was like, "Hey, do you want treatment?" "No, have a nice day." Like there was none of that. So different ball game. I see things different. I feel things different today. And yeah, I am grateful to be able to do all of this that I have the ability to do. And let me tell you, every person is not gonna be able to go out there and become a recovery coach and do post overdose work. So if you are looking for that and it doesn't work out, there's many other organizations that have that model that's more of like a long-term one-on-one recovery coach. And it does take a unique individual to be able to see these things all the time and see the pain and to be able to go back and deal with my own and fill my own cup. Because the number one cup on this planet that needs to be filled is my own. I'm the most important person in every room I go into still till this day because I got to get what I need.
And you can't give to others if you haven't, right? It's the oxygen mask first, like that. You have to do that. And I think that's, part of a combination of who you are and how you got here. But also because you continue to take care of yourself, that allows you to do this tough work. And one of the things that struck me that I just I know we gotta wrap up here. We could talk with you all day, and you warned us, Matt, you could talk all day too. So we could do this all day. We'll probably have to have you back on at some point. But you talked a lot about your own abandonment issues, and it just strikes me that what you're doing now is a continuous way to heal that, right? Because you are making sure that so many other people in the community don't feel abandoned, right? And you get to walk alongside them. And there's a lot of personal healing that comes from doing that with others. And so that just really, really strikes me.
Yeah, today I'm a true believer there's no such thing as fully healed. It's a long-term life process of being able to work with the trauma. I'm a believer that it will never go away. As long as I'm working on myself through growth and working healing processes through my life, I'm able to work with it and not against it. I'm able to accept it as what it is and to be able to move forward with it. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever be healed because there's always that surface in me of it brings me back to those places.
No.
And none of us are, and I say all the time, and then I'll let you wrap us up, Jesse, because I'm sure you've got some awesome things to say. But I've said it here on this podcast before. One of the gifts that me working in this addiction recovery, doing this podcast, part of why I've been doing this for so many years is the opportunity to meet so many people who have done so much work. Because in order to move towards recovery, you have to do a lot of that internal work. And so many of us not in recovery may never do it, right? So we may never even get that level of introspection, that level of taking a look at ourselves and our behavior and our traumas and our history and doing things about it. And individuals in long-term recovery have had to do that. And so you emit a light, I think, that that the rest of the world sometimes doesn't have. And it's a real gift for me to just be around others with that light. So Jesse, I'll let you.
Well, Matt, I am grateful for you. I am eternally grateful for your vulnerability on here today, sharing your story empathically, sharing it raw and honestly at times. And, you had some nice things to say about a fellow traveler in this recovery path. And I will leave you with this. I get fired up listening to your and hearing somebody doing these knock and talks with plainclothes police. I was just speaking with somebody recently, individual continuing to use, went to school for criminal justice. We get to talking about, oh, what did you go to school for? Why did you want to do that? And this person said, I wanted to be a police officer before active addiction. And I told them all about what you're doing today. And I watched the light in this person's face light up. You mean I can do that when I'm in recovery? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know countless people that do these ride-along programs. And here we are today talking about your post-overdose program and then knock and talk. So again, I'm a believer too that nothing happens, everything happens for a reason. Nothing happens by coincidence. So I thank you for sharing your story. And I am just eternally grateful for you doing the work that you're doing, and will be grateful all day today and hopefully many to come, just thinking of someone like yourself out on the front lines with such a powerful message. So thank you, Matt.
Appreciate that, Jesse. And quick plug on the GAP, GAAP recovery.org. We work on getting scholarships for individuals to enter their journey to supportive housing / sober living. And we also, with GAP, work with men coming out of the prison system, trying to get back into society, back into being a father, maybe back into being a husband again. So we work with men as well through the prison system. And projecthealinghouse.com is our supportive housing units. So you can check us out on both of those. If
Awesome.
any questions, please reach out to us, and we're always willing to help.
We
I
can
just-
talk some of that in the show notes too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of there and available. And it probably would also be appropriate for us to recognize and thank DA Joseph Early for supporting this program. We are really grateful at Spectrum that we've allowed this program to transition to our continuum through that funding. So now we get to say that Matt is one of us. And so we are just really grateful to be part of this initiative and grateful for that opportunity and funding out of the DA's office.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Matt. Thank you, Lisa. This has been a great episode. See you all back again next month to talk about recovery in the holidays. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.